Tonight, while you sleep, something is happening inside your body that most people over 60 never find out about until it's too late. Not next year, not someday. Tonight. Right now, if you are over 60 and you follow even 2 or 3 of the habits I'm about to describe, your heart is working against a system that was never designed to protect you in the dark hours. And here is the part that shocks most people. None of these habits feel dangerous. None of them feel like anything at all. They feel like Tuesday night. They feel like every night. A study following over 90,000 adults published in the European Heart Journal found that the hours between midnight and 6 in the morning carry the highest concentration of heart attacks and strokes in the entire 24-hour cycle. Not the morning rush, not the afternoon, the quiet hours. The hours when you assume nothing can go wrong because you are asleep. Now here's the critical question. What determines whether those hours protect you or destroy you? The answer is what you did before you turned off the light. 5 habits, 5 decisions that feel completely ordinary. And for seniors over 60, each one quietly loads the gun while you sleep. I'm going to show you all 5 of them today, and then I'm going to show you exactly how to dismantle every single one, with specifics, with timelines, with the real science behind why these things work the way they do. But before I do, I need to tell you about number 1 on this list, because number 1 is going to surprise you most. You have almost certainly done it tonight already. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that has to change. Let me ask you something first. Has a doctor ever sat down with you and explained what your heart actually does between midnight and 6 in the morning? Not a pamphlet, not a checkbox on a form, a real conversation. Type yes or no in the comments right now. I'm genuinely curious, because in my experience, this is the conversation that almost never happens, and it is one of the most important conversations about heart health you will ever have. Now, let me tell you why. Here is what your cardiovascular system is supposed to do while you sleep. In a healthy body, blood pressure naturally falls by 10 to 20% during the night. Your heart rate slows. Your arterial walls relax. Think of it like your plumbing finally getting a break after running all day. The pressure drops. The pipes cool down. The whole system exhales. Doctors call this nocturnal dipping. And it is not just a comfort feature. It is a fundamental maintenance cycle. Your heart repairs itself in these hours. Your arteries shed inflammatory markers. Your blood pressure regulation resets. But here is what nobody explains to you in a 7-minute appointment. After 60, this system becomes less reliable. Not broken, less reliable. Arterial walls grow stiffer. Blood pressure regulation loses some of its precision. The hormonal signals that once protected your heart during those quiet hours, they begin to weaken. Think of it this way. During the day, your cardiovascular system has backup mechanisms. If one thing fails, something else compensates. It adapts. At night, especially after 60, many of those protective mechanisms are essentially offline. Your body is running on a skeleton crew. And into that vulnerability, walk 5 ordinary habits. Let me walk you through them. Starting with the one that generates the most disbelief when I explain it to patients who have been doing it for 40 years. Here's something I need you to picture clearly. I want you to imagine a garden hose, old one, slightly stiff, left in the sun for about 20 years. The outside is a little chalky. The inside has some mineral buildup. When you turn on the water at normal pressure, it flows fine. It does its job. Now I want you to imagine someone turning on that hose at 2 in the morning, at full pressure, while a section of it is partially kinked. That is what happens inside a compromised cardiovascular system when the wrong conditions stack up during sleep. The pressure comes from a direction the system is not prepared for. The wall that seemed fine under normal conditions gives way. This is not dramatic exaggeration. This is the mechanism behind the majority of nocturnal cardiac events. And understanding it is why what I'm about to show you actually works. Now, let's start with habit 1. What time did you eat dinner last night? I want you to actually think about that, not just pass over it as a question. For most of the patients I have worked with over the years, dinner happens somewhere between 7:30 and 9 at night, sometimes later, after work, after grandchildren, after the evening news, a full meal, pasta, chicken, maybe something with a sauce, followed by the couch, followed by bed within an hour or 2. I understand completely why this happens. Life schedules do not cooperate with ideal medical timing. But from a cardiac standpoint, This routine is quietly doing something your doctor never explained in that 7-minute visit. Here is what happens inside your body when you eat a large meal. Your digestive system immediately demands a massive increase in blood flow. Think of it as a surge of circulation redirected from everywhere else toward your gut. Your heart has to pump significantly harder. Your blood pressure rises. And within 2 to 4 hours of eating, triglycerides, the fats circulating in your blood, spike sharply. Now hold that picture and add sleep on top of it. Your body expects the evening to be a winding down period, not a full cardiovascular emergency, but when you eat a heavy meal late and then immediately try to sleep, you are asking your heart to do two completely opposite things at the same time. Digestion says, send more blood, work harder, move faster. Sleep says, slow down, reduce pressure, rest. Those two commands conflict directly, and in a cardiovascular system that already has some arterial stiffness, some plaque buildup, some reduced nighttime protection, that conflict creates conditions where dangerous things happen. Published research in the journal Hypertension found that eating within 2 hours of bedtime is associated with significantly elevated nighttime blood pressure readings, not the next morning, during the night, while you are asleep and completely unaware. Elevated nighttime blood pressure. Let me say that again. While you think you are safely in bed, resting, giving your heart a break, your blood pressure is actually elevated. Your heart is working against higher resistance. And the arterial walls that were supposed to be relaxing are not relaxing. The fix is not complicated, but it does require a shift that feels strange at first. Finish your main meal by 6 or 7 in the evening. That gives your digestive system 3 to 4 hours to complete its work before you ask your body to transition into nighttime recovery mode. If your schedule makes that genuinely impossible, then make dinner lighter. Lean protein, vegetables, a small amount of complex carbohydrate, not a feast, not skipped. A meal that respects what your heart needs to do after you fall asleep. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You have been eating dinner at 8 for 30 years and nothing bad has happened. Here is what I want you to understand about that. Cardiovascular damage does not announce itself with warning signs in the early stages. It accumulates silently, for years, for decades. The garden hose does not spring a leak the first day it is left in the sun. It looks fine, then fine, then fine. Then one day, the pressure hits a compromised spot at the wrong moment, at the wrong time of night. The fact that nothing has happened yet is not proof that nothing is happening. Now, before I move on to habit 2, let me tell you about Margaret. She is 71, retired nurse, 30 years on hospital floors. She knows more about medications and procedures than most people will ever learn, but when she came to me 2 years ago, she was exhausted in a way she could not explain. Picture her sitting across from me. Hands folded, calm professional, she says, I know the clinical side. I just need someone to explain to me why I keep waking up at 4 in the morning, feeling like my heart is pounding. She had been eating dinner at 8:30 every night. Comfortable habit. Never questioned it because her blood work looked reasonable and her doctor never mentioned it. That number of 8:30, it is about to become very significant. But first, I need to tell you about habit 2, because this one affects more than 60% of people over 60, and most of them have absolutely no idea. Here is a question that very few doctors ask and very few patients think to raise. What time of day do you take your blood pressure medication? If you take it in the morning, you are in the majority. Most people do. The bottle says once daily. Mornings are when people take pills. Simple routine. But here is what the research has found, and what gets lost in a 7-minute appointment. Blood pressure follows a daily rhythm. It rises through the morning, peaks in the afternoon, falls during the night. In a healthy cardiovascular system, that nighttime fall is significant and protective. But a large percentage of people over 60, especially those with hypertension, never experience that healthy nighttime drop. Their pressure stays elevated, or worse. It surges in the early morning hours between 2 and 6. This condition has a name: nocturnal hypertension. Most people have never heard of it. Yet it is more dangerous, in specific ways, than ordinary daytime high blood pressure. Let me explain why. Imagine pressure washing a cracked pipe at 3 in the morning when nobody is watching and nothing is in place to contain a rupture. During the day, your arterial walls are operating in a state of relative readiness. At night, they are not. When blood pressure surges in the small hours, the impact on arterial walls and any vulnerable plaque deposits is different, more concentrated, less buffered. A pressure surge at 3 in the morning affects those walls in a way that the same spike at 3 in the afternoon simply does not. If you take your blood pressure medication in the morning and it is largely metabolized by evening, you may be leaving yourself completely unprotected during the exact hours your cardiovascular system is most vulnerable. Now, I need to be crystal clear about something. This is not a reason to stop taking your medication or change your dose on your own. Never do that. What this is the basis for one specific conversation with your doctor. Ask directly, should I be taking this medication in the evening instead of the morning? The hydrochronotherapy trial, a large-scale study involving nearly 20,000 patients followed for over 6 years, found that taking blood pressure medication at bedtime rather than in the morning was associated with a 45% reduction in major cardiovascular events during sleep. 45%. Let that settle for a moment. A 45% reduction. Not from a new drug, not from a complicated procedure, from changing the time of day. You take the pill you are already taking. That is the kind of information that does not fit in a 7-minute appointment. Not because your doctor does not care, because the system gives them 7 minutes. You deserve more than 7 minutes, and now you have it. Go ask that question. Write it down if you need to. At your next appointment, should I be taking my blood pressure medication in the evening? That 2-minute conversation could be the most important one you have this year. Now, back to Margaret. Her medication, she had been taking it every morning. 8 a.m., consistent as clockwork. Because that is what the instructions said. Nobody had ever reviewed her timing. When I reviewed her medication schedule, I noticed something. Her morning blood pressure readings were reasonable, but the readings she occasionally took at night slightly elevated. Nothing alarming on paper, but a pattern that told a story once you knew what to look for. Her timing was adjusted with her cardiologist's involvement. Moved her medication to evening. I'll tell you what happened to those 4 a.m. episodes in a few minutes. First, habit 3, and this one surprises nearly every patient I work with because it sounds like something completely unrelated to the heart. Does anyone in your household snore? Not a gentle, soft sound, the loud, irregular rumbling, the kind that wakes people in the next room, the kind that earns an elbow in the ribs at 2 a.m. Most people treat snoring as an annoyance, a joke, something you apologize for and move on from. I treat it as a potential cardiac warning sign until proven otherwise. Here is what is actually happening when someone snores and stops breathing during the night, which is what sleep apnea is. You stop breathing for 10 seconds, sometimes 30, sometimes longer. The oxygen level in your blood drops. Your brain detects a crisis. It activates your emergency stress response immediately. Adrenaline, cortisol. Your heart rate accelerates sharply. Your blood pressure spikes. Your heart is essentially being shocked awake while the rest of your body is still asleep. You never reach full consciousness. You have no memory of it in the morning. Now imagine that happening 30 times in 1 hour, 40 times, 50, all night, every night, for years. Think of it like a car engine being repeatedly revved to full throttle and then immediately cut back to idle, all night long, night after night. The stress that places on the mechanical components, on the seals, the valves, the connections, is cumulative. It adds up, silently, until something gives. Research published in the journal Circulation found that untreated sleep apnea is associated with a 3-fold increase in the risk of heart attack, 3 times. That is not a minor statistical footnote. That is a number that should make anyone stop and pay attention. It is also strongly linked to atrial fibrillation, which dramatically raises stroke risk, and it accelerates the stiffening of arterial walls in ways that take decades to reverse. Because all of this happens while you sleep, most people have absolutely no awareness that anything is wrong. The damage accumulates invisibly until a serious event occurs. The warning signs are not always the snoring itself. Some people with significant sleep apnea do not snore loudly at all. Watch for these. Waking with headaches in the morning, feeling completely exhausted despite sleeping 8 hours, needing to urinate 2 or 3 times during the night, waking with a dry mouth, having a partner or family member tell you that you stop breathing periodically while asleep. If any of those sound familiar, bring them to your doctor. Ask specifically about a sleep study. It can be done at home now. No overnight hospital stay required. Here is what I want to say very directly. If you snore heavily, you are over 60, and you have any cardiac history at all. Getting evaluated for sleep apnea is not optional. It is not something to schedule someday. It belongs in the same category of urgency as your blood pressure medication. The treatment most people think of first is CPAP, and yes, many people resist it. The mask, the noise, the adjustment period. But here is what the evidence shows. Patients who consistently use CPAP therapy experience measurable reductions in blood pressure, lower rates of atrial fibrillation, significantly reduced cardiovascular risk markers across multiple studies. One device, one habit. The protection it provides is extraordinary. Now, if you are not ready for a formal evaluation yet, there is one immediate thing you can do tonight. Sleep on your side. That is not a metaphor. That is a clinical instruction. Sleeping on your back causes the soft tissues at the back of your throat to collapse into your airway. That collapse is what creates both the snoring and the breathing interruptions. Simply rolling to your side can reduce the severity significantly for many people. It is not a cure, but it is something you can do tonight while you arrange a proper evaluation. Now, this is where Margaret's story gets interesting. When I asked her about her sleep, she paused, then said, "My late husband used to say I snored, but he passed 4 years ago, and there is nobody to tell me anymore." Think about that for a moment. Millions of people living alone have no one to observe what happens while they sleep. They have no way to know whether they stop breathing, whether they thrash, whether their heart rate spikes repeatedly while they believe they are resting peacefully. Margaret had never been evaluated for sleep apnea. It had simply never come up. A home sleep study later confirmed moderate sleep apnea, enough to generate repeated stress events throughout the night, enough to explain the 4 a.m. awakening with a pounding heart. But there was a third factor contributing to that, and it is the one that catches people off guard the most because it is driven by completely logical thinking. Ignaz, how much water do you drink in the evening? Many people over 60 deliberately reduce their evening fluid intake. The reasoning is completely sensible. Avoiding the bathroom at 2 in the morning, preventing falls in the dark, protecting sleep from interruption. I understand that reasoning completely. But from a cardiac standpoint, going to bed even slightly dehydrated is a risk factor that almost nobody explains. Here is the mechanism. When you are dehydrated, your blood becomes more viscous, thicker. Think of the difference between motor oil in winter versus fresh water. One flows freely, the other moves sluggishly, struggles to get through narrow passages. For a younger cardiovascular system, mildly thicker blood is a manageable inconvenience. The heart compensates, the vessels adapt. For someone over 60 with some arterial stiffness, some areas of narrowing from decades of plaque buildup, it is an entirely different situation. Now add sleep to that picture. During sleep, your heart rate naturally slows. Blood circulation slows as well. Your body is essentially motionless for 7 or 8 hours, and that sluggish, thicker than optimal blood is now moving slowly through arteries that are narrowed, through a system that is operating with reduced pressure and reduced flow rate. That combination, dehydration plus slower circulation plus underlying arterial compromise, is a significant contributor to why clots form during the night, why heart attacks happen at 3 in the morning rather than at 3 in the afternoon. The solution is remarkable in its simplicity. 1 full glass of water before bed, 8 ounces, that is all. Not a large amount, not enough to send you to the bathroom twice before midnight, just enough to ensure your blood is not unnecessarily concentrated as it moves through your cardiovascular system during sleep. Keep a second glass on your bedside table. If you wake at 2 in the morning feeling slightly thirsty, your body is telling you something your heart also needs. Now I can already hear the objection. If I drink water before bed, I will be up 3 times overnight. Here is what I have observed consistently. The goal is not to make this choice disappear. The goal is to understand what you are actually trading. You are trading one possible bathroom trip for measurably reduced cardiovascular risk while you sleep. Which inconvenience would you rather have? Most of my patients, once they understand the actual trade-off, choose the water. And here is something else worth knowing. Many people who wake frequently at night to urinate are actually waking because of sleep apnea first, and noticing their bladder as a secondary effect once they are awake. Addressing the apnea often reduces the nighttime bathroom visits significantly. These habits are connected. They compound each other in both directions. Now, Margaret's evening routine included specifically avoiding all fluids after 7 p.m. She was proud of this habit. She had developed it to protect her sleep. Her logic was sound. Her blood viscosity, measured the following morning after an overnight fast, showed readings at the upper edge of normal, not alarming, but consistent with reduced hydration. When she added the single bedtime glass of water, combined with the medication timing change and the CPAP she would later start, the picture began to shift, but there were still two more habits to address. And one of them is going to sound almost too simple to matter. Save this video right now, because the last two habits, and the specific protocol I'm going to give you in a few minutes, are the parts most people never get to. People stop, they try one or two changes, and then wonder why they are not seeing results. What I am about to share next is why the changes have to work together. You will want to come back to this. Let me ask you something you have probably never been asked. What temperature is your bedroom at night? Most people set it for comfort. Personal preference. What feels good when you climb into bed? What almost nobody considers is how bedroom temperature affects the cardiovascular system during sleep. Let me show you why it matters. When your bedroom is too warm, above approximately 22 degrees Celsius, or about 72 degrees Fahrenheit, your body is working continuously throughout the night to release excess heat. Your blood vessels dilate trying to push heat to the surface. Your heart rate remains elevated. You sweat, which brings you directly back to the dehydration issue I described earlier, but perhaps more importantly, your sleep quality degrades. When your bedroom is warm, you spend less time in deep slow-wave sleep. That is the stage where your heart performs its most critical overnight maintenance, the stage where inflammatory markers are cleared, where arterial repair happens, where blood pressure regulation is reinforced for the following day. Less deep sleep, less cardiovascular repair. Now let's look at the opposite problem. A bedroom that is genuinely too cold, below approximately 16 or 17 degrees Celsius, creates a different form of cardiovascular stress. Cold temperatures cause vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels constrict to preserve core body temperature. As they tighten, blood pressure rises. Your heart pumps against greater resistance. For someone with coronary artery disease, for someone whose medication is supposed to be managing that resistance, the cold essentially works against the medication at exactly the wrong time. The optimal window is between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius, 65 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. In that range, your body enters what physiologists call a thermally neutral state. Blood vessels remain relaxed. Heart rate stays low and steady. Deep sleep becomes accessible. Cardiovascular repair proceeds as it should. One thermostat adjustment, one decision. But the downstream effect on every other system, already covered, is significant. Here's the thing about these habits. They are not independent of each other. They are a system. When your bedroom is too warm, you sweat and dehydrate. When you dehydrate, your blood thickens. When your blood thickens and your sleep apnea goes untreated, your heart is fighting multiple problems simultaneously. When you add a heavy late dinner that keeps blood pressure elevated and a morning medication that has worn off by midnight, you have not made 5 small mistakes. You have constructed a cascade. And what I am about to show you is how to dismantle that cascade, piece by piece, evening by evening. Before I give you the complete protocol, let me tell you about a 5th habit that ties everything together, because this one is the one that most people think is helping them. Habit 5 is the screen. Your phone, the television, the tablet you use to read before bed. The blue light emitted by these screens suppresses melatonin production. That is the hormone that signals your brain that it is time to sleep. When melatonin is suppressed, the transition from wakefulness to deep sleep is delayed, fragmented, or incomplete. But here is what most discussions about screen time miss entirely. The content on those screens also matters. The news at 10 p.m., the argument on social media, the email from a family member that lands at 9:30 and sits in your head. These are not passive experiences. They activate your sympathetic nervous system. They elevate cortisol. They raise blood pressure in the hour before sleep. And that elevation in a cardiovascular system that is already navigating stiffened arteries and unreliable nocturnal dipping does not disappear the moment your head hits the pillow. The research here is clear. A study from the Journal of Sleep Research found that exposure to emotionally activating content in the hour before bed was associated with significantly elevated nighttime heart rate variability markers, indicating an elevated stress response that persisted well into sleep. Screens off by 9 p.m. That is the recommendation, not because of vague wellness principles, because the data connects blue light, cortisol elevation, and delayed cardiovascular recovery in a direct chain. If you read before bed, use a physical book or a reader set to warm light. If you enjoy television in the evening, finish by 9. Give your nervous system 60 minutes to land before you ask it to protect your heart through the night. This fifth habit is the quietest one on this list. Nobody dies from watching the evening news, but it is the one that most consistently undermines every other effort you make. Margaret, as it turned out, had been watching news and scrolling through her phone until roughly 10:30 every night. The content was often distressing, because news tends to be. She would fall asleep with an elevated heart rate and a nervous system that had not been given permission to wind down. That, combined with the late dinner, the morning medication timing, the undiagnosed apnea, and the slightly cool bedroom she kept for comfort, was the full picture. 5 habits, all of them ordinary, all of them invisible. Now I am going to show you exactly how to address every single one. Here is what I want you to understand before I give you the protocol. This is not a list of suggestions. It is a system. Each component interacts with every other component. Changing one in isolation helps. Changing all 5 together creates a fundamentally different physiological environment for your heart during the hours it is most vulnerable. Bear with me for the next section. I am going to give you specifics. Real numbers, real timing. Because the difference between eat dinner early and finish your main meal by 6:45 p.m. is the difference between an instruction you forget by Wednesday and one you can actually build a routine around. Here is the heart's evening protection protocol. Between 5:30 and 7 p.m., this is your dinner window. Your main meal should be complete within this window, not a snack, a real meal. Lean protein, chicken, fish, turkey, non-starchy vegetables filling at least half the plate, a moderate serving of complex carbohydrates if you need them, brown rice, sweet potato, legumes, reasonable portion size, not a feast. What you are avoiding: pasta-heavy meals, large amounts of red meat, fried foods, anything that takes more than 2 hours to digest significantly. This gives your heart 3 to 4 hours of digestive support before midnight. 3 to 4 hours where your blood pressure is allowed to follow its natural descent rather than fighting a food-driven surge at the same time. If your schedule makes 6:45 genuinely impossible, aim for 7:30 maximum. And on the nights when you eat later than that, make it lighter than what you would normally have. One practical tip: cook dinner slightly earlier than you think you need to. If you are aiming for 7, start cooking at 6. The moment it is done, eat. Do not let it sit on the stove for another hour while life intervenes. 7 to 7:30 p.m. This is your medication and hydration window. If you take blood pressure medication, this is the conversation I want you to have with your doctor at your next visit. Bring it up specifically. Say, "I've been reading about chronotherapy for blood pressure medication. Should I be taking mine in the evening instead of the morning?" Your doctor may say yes. They may say no, for reasons specific to your condition, but the conversation needs to happen. If they do recommend evening timing, here is what the research suggests. Taking it between 7 and 9 p.m. appears to provide the most effective coverage for the critical midnight to 6 window. Write down what time you take it. Track your morning blood pressure readings for 2 weeks. You will see something change. At 7:30, drink your bedtime glass of water, 8 ounces, room temperature. Not ice cold, which can cause mild arterial constriction, just water. Plain, or with a small squeeze of lemon if that helps you drink it more consistently. If you take magnesium or another cardiac supplement your doctor has recommended, this is also the time for that. Magnesium specifically, 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate, has been shown in multiple studies to support nighttime blood pressure regulation and reduce the frequency of nocturnal pressure surges. Talk to your doctor about whether this is appropriate for you, and if you are on blood thinners, diuretics, or kidney medications, check before adding any supplement. The interaction risks are real and specific to your situation. 8 to 9 p.m. This is your wind down window. Screens off by 9. That is the non-negotiable part. What fills that hour is up to you. Reading a physical book, A gentle walk around the block if the weather allows. A warm bath or shower, which has the additional benefit of raising your core temperature slightly, which then triggers a natural drop as you get out, signaling to your brain that sleep is approaching. Conversation, music without lyrics, stretching on the floor for 10 minutes. The single criterion: it should not activate your sympathetic nervous system. No news, no arguments resolved via text message, no financial statements reviewed at 8:45 p.m., no difficult phone calls initiated in this hour. Your heart needs permission to slow down before it is asked to protect you through the night. If you find it genuinely difficult to disengage from screens, and many people do, because these devices are engineered specifically to prevent you from disengaging, here is a practical workaround. Set an alarm on your phone at 8:45 labeled Heart Protection Time. When it goes off, put the phone face down and do not look at it again until morning. It sounds almost too simple, but the external prompt removes the moment of decision, and the moment of decision is where most habits fail. Unknowingly. 9 to 9:30 p.m. This is your bedroom preparation window. Check your thermostat. If you do not have one, a simple digital room thermometer costs very little and tells you exactly what your sleeping environment is. Your target is 18 to 22 degrees Celsius, 65 to 72 Fahrenheit. If your bedroom runs warm, open a window for 20 minutes before you sleep, then close it. A small fan circulating air without lowering temperature significantly can also help. If you tend toward the cold end, an extra blanket is better than a warmer room. Your core can be warm while the ambient air stays in the optimal range. Place a full glass of water on your bedside table, not for drinking before sleep. You already did that. This is for when you wake at 2 in the morning, which many people do. Having it there removes the barrier and ensures hydration is immediately available. If you have been told by anyone that you snore, tonight start sleeping on your side. Put a pillow behind your back if you tend to roll during the night. The physical barrier is not elegant, but it works. 10 p.m. lights out. This timing matters. Going to sleep before 10:30 allows you to capture the most restorative cycles of deep sleep, which are concentrated in the first half of the night. Research from the European Heart Journal, published in 2021, found that falling asleep between 10 and 11 p.m. was associated with the lowest risk of cardiovascular disease compared to both earlier and later sleep times. 10 to 11 p.m. is the window, not 9, not midnight. Now, I need to be honest with you about what to expect in the first weeks, because this is where most people make a critical mistake. Week 1 is not going to feel like a transformation. Let me say that directly because you deserve to know. Week 1, you are going to go to bed earlier than feels natural. Your body is going to resist the earlier dinner time. If you start CPAP therapy for apnea, the first several nights are genuinely awkward. The evening water will send you to the bathroom once, maybe twice, before you settle into the new rhythm. I am not going to tell you this is seamless. Week 1 is about building the physical routine, not feeling results. The habit needs to become automatic before the benefits become measurable. Week 2 is when people begin to notice the first signals. Slightly better quality of sleep, not dramatic, but something shifts. You may notice you wake up feeling less like you have been fighting all night. Your morning energy is marginally better. If you are tracking blood pressure, some people begin to see a slight downward drift in morning readings. Week 3 is the week I hear from patients with a different quality of voice. Something is different. I cannot fully explain it, but I slept through until 5:30 without waking up. That has not happened in years. This is the week when the system stabilizes. The compounding effect of all 5 habits working together begins to register at a physiological level that you can actually feel. Week 4 and beyond is where the numbers begin to change. Blood pressure readings that were consistently at the upper edge of your target begin to settle more reliably into range. Energy throughout the day improves. The general sense of vague fatigue that many people over 60 accept as normal begins to lift. I want to be clear. I am not promising a cure. I am not telling you this replaces your medication or your medical care. What I am telling you is that these habits change the environment your medications are operating in. They allow your medications to work more effectively. They reduce the background noise of cardiovascular stress that was fighting your treatment every night. The discomfort of week 1 confirms that something is changing. That is not a reason to stop. Most people quit within 4 days. I have watched it happen many times. The bathroom trip at 2 a.m. feels like failure. The earlier dinner feels arbitrary. The CPAP sits on the nightstand unused. And then 3 weeks later, they call, frustrated, wondering why their blood pressure is not improving. Here is the question I ask them. Did you push through week 1? That week is the price of admission. Pay it. And now I need to be crystal clear about something before I continue. If you are on anticoagulants like warfarin or newer blood thinners, the magnesium supplement recommendation requires a direct conversation with your doctor first. These medications have specific interaction profiles that are highly individual. If you have congestive heart failure or kidney disease, the recommendation to drink water before bed may not apply to you in the same way. Fluid management in these conditions is much more individualized. Your doctor's specific guidance takes precedence over everything I am saying here. If you have a history of syncope or severe orthostatic hypotension, the evening medication timing discussion with your doctor is especially important. Evening blood pressure medication combined with these conditions requires careful titration. These are not afterthoughts. They are part of the honest picture. The protocol I have described works exceptionally well for the majority of people over 60 with hypertension and no major complicating conditions. For those with more complex histories, it needs to be adapted. Bring this information to your next appointment. Print it out if that helps. The conversation is worth having, regardless of what adjustments you ultimately make. Now, let me tell you what happened to Margaret. 3 weeks after my conversation with her, when she had adjusted her dinner timing, moved her medication to evening with her cardiologist's approval, started CPAP, and added the bedtime glass of water and the phone off by 9 rule, she called on a Tuesday morning. Picture her, sitting at her kitchen table, a woman who spent 30 years on hospital floors, who has seen more medical outcomes than most people will ever encounter. And she says, very quietly, I slept straight through until 5:45, no 4 a.m. pounding, no waking up already exhausted. I did not think that was available to me anymore. She had accepted the disrupted nights as part of aging. They had been disrupted for so long, she had forgotten what undisrupted felt like. Her morning blood pressure reading that day was 128/79. 3 weeks earlier, it had been 144/88. Consistent, not budging despite medication. Now, I want to be careful here, because Margaret also had the CPAP, which independently lowers blood pressure, and her cardiologist had reviewed the timing change. I cannot point to a single variable and say, this was the cause. The improvement came from the system, all 5 habits working together, creating a different environment for her heart to operate in during the most vulnerable hours of the night. 6 months later, at her annual cardiac review, her cardiologist noted that her nighttime pressure profiles had normalized for the first time in 4 years. Her sleep study showed dramatically reduced apnea events per hour. Her morning energy had shifted enough that she had started volunteering at the hospital 3 days a week. Not a cure, not magic, a system, applied consistently. And here is the insight that Margaret shared with me that I think about often. She said, I spent 30 years telling patients to take their medications and make lifestyle changes. I thought I was doing those things. Turns out I was doing them at the wrong time and then wondering why they were not working as well as they should. The information was available all along. It just had not been organized into something she could act on. That is what this is. Information organized into something you can act on. Tonight, let me bring everything together. 5 habits that are silently working against your cardiovascular system during the night's most dangerous hours. Late dinner. You fix this by finishing your main meal by 6:45 or 7, 3 to 4 hours of clearance before midnight. Morning-only blood pressure medication. You fix this by having one specific conversation with your doctor about evening timing. The Hygia chronotherapy trial data supports this approach strongly. The number you need to remember: 45% reduction in cardiovascular events during sleep, undiagnosed or untreated sleep apnea. You fix this by asking your doctor for a sleep study evaluation. Start by sleeping on your side tonight. The 3-fold increase in cardiac risk from untreated apnea is too significant to leave unaddressed. Evening dehydration. You fix this with 1 glass of water at 7:30 and 1 glass on the bedside table. 8 ounces each. The raisin versus the grape. Which one do you want your cardiovascular cells to resemble while they work through the night? Late screens and stress activation. You fix this with screens off at 9 p.m., 60 minutes of nervous system permission to land before sleep. That is the system. 5 habits, 5 fixes, 1 protocol, 1 evening at a time. Here is what I want you to do right now. Type "I finished" in the comments if you made it to the end of this video. You are in a small group. Most people do not make it this far. The ones who do are the ones who care enough to act. And then I want you to think of one specific person in your life, your spouse, your mother or father if they are still with you, a sibling, a close friend over 60, someone whose evening routine you have never thought to question because it seems so normal. Send this video to them today, not tomorrow, today, because the habits I have described tonight are the habits of most people over 60 in most countries. They are the defaults, the accepted routines. Nobody questions them because they seem like just how evenings are. The people who change these habits are the ones who learned something they did not know before. That is now you. You have the information. Now pass it on. One last thing before you go. Next week, I am going to talk about something that happens every single morning that undoes much of what good evening habits accomplish. There is one specific thing that millions of people do within the first 30 minutes of waking. Something that sounds completely healthy, something they have been told is good for them for decades. That research now suggests can significantly spike cardiovascular stress markers in people over 60. I saved it for next week because you needed this foundation first. What you do in the evening creates the conditions. What you do in the morning either builds on that or cancels it. That is next week. If you found today's video useful, subscribe and turn on the notification so you do not miss it. The information you and I are working through, it connects. Each video builds on the last. Today, you have done something that takes real effort. You paid attention for the long stretch. You sat with uncomfortable information. You learned something most people will never take the time to learn. Your heart has been working faithfully for you every minute of every day and every night of your entire life. Tonight, give it better conditions to work in. And remember, everything shared in this video is educational and based on published research and clinical observation. It is not a substitute for your personal medical care. The case study shared today represents a composite pattern based on outcomes I have observed repeatedly in practice. Individual results vary. Before making changes to your medication timing or adding supplements, speak with your own doctor. These conversations are worth having. A good doctor will welcome them. References for every study mentioned today are in the description below. The journal names, the year, the search terms you can use to verify them on PubMed yourself. I believe you deserve to check my sources. Please do. Take care of your heart tonight.